No sun, no stars, just the endless howl of the wind and the sting of frost so sharp it sliced the skin like knives. The world was white, a wasteland of snow dunes and razor-cold gales that screamed across the land like the mourning cries of lost souls. In that merciless storm, something moved, something small, broken, desperate. Neria stumbled forward, her limbs shaking with each step, her breath a ragged rasp in the frozen air. Her wings, once strong and shimmering, were torn and frost-covered, wrapped tightly around the two tiny bundles against her chest. She didn't care about herself anymore. All that mattered were the hatchlings, Rick and Luma, her bobbies. Her tail dragged behind her, leaving a faint trail in the snow that the storm tried to erase. She could barely see, barely think. Her scales, once radiant blue and silver, had dulled to a pale, brittle gray. Hunger gnawed at her stomach. Pain throbbed in her joints. But she kept moving. She had to. The elders had cast her out, said her young were born weak, unfit, a burden. No food for failures, they told her, no shelter, no mercy. She begged them, pleaded. But they turned away, cold as the ice that clung to her body. She had nowhere else to go. Except one place. The humans. She had seen their settlement from the cliffs before. Strange metal walls, blinking lights, machines that breathed fire into the air. They had warmth, they had tools, maybe, just maybe, they had hearts. Her vision swam, every breath burned. Her legs refused to lift high enough anymore, so she dragged herself, claw by claw. The wind shrieked louder as if mocking her struggle. Snow gathered on her eyelashes, her knees buckled again and again. But she didn't stop. Then through the swirling white she saw it. Tall gates, a blinking red light. Thick metal walls rising from the ice like the bones of some ancient beast. She collapsed. Then she crawled. The last few meters felt eternal. Her claws scraped the frozen ground. Her tail no longer moved. Her wings were wrapped so tightly around her young she didn't know if they still breathed. But she reached it. A camera turned, a red dot focused on her. Neria lifted her head. "Please." Her voice came out as a whisper, barely a sound. She tried again. "Please help." She lifted her arms, showing them the bobbies. Two tiny dragonlings, silent and still. Their blue lips were frozen, their eyes shut, no movement. Her body gave out. She fell face first into the snow, still clutching them tight. Jace wasn't expecting anything more than another shift of cold boredom. As the foreman of Outpost Denver 7, his days were a cycle of fuel checks, machinery diagnostics, and mediating between engineers who hated each other. The snowstorms made everything worse. Tension rose with the ice levels. The crew was tired. Morale was low. So when the perimeter alarm buzzed, he assumed it was a wild snow ram or maybe a collapsed antenna. What he didn't expect was a figure on the ground. "Show me the feed," he barked. The tech pulled it up. And what in the stars? Jace stared at the screen. A creature humanoid but scaled. Wings folded, curled on the ground like a fallen bird, and in her arms. "Those look like kids," the tech said. "Gear up," Jace ordered. "I'm going out." "What if it's a trap?" "Then I'll spring it." Outside, the cold hit like a hammer. Jace pulled his scarf tighter and ran toward the gate with two others. The gate hissed open, wind rushing in. The snow was so thick he nearly missed her. Then he saw the bundles. "Gods," he muttered. He knelt. "They're freezing, get heat packs, stretchers, move." His men hesitated. "It's one of them, boss, the Scalies. We don't know what she's doing here." "I don't care what she is, she's a mother, and those are kids." Jace gently pulled the bobbies from her arms. Stiff, so small, his gloved hand trembled as he pressed a finger to the chest of one. "They're a beat faint. They're alive." Inside, everything was chaos. Blankets, heaters, Megil. The doctor shouted orders, machines whirred, and Jace stood at the center of it all, trying to keep the bobbies alive. Neria lay still on a cot, breathing shallowly. She hadn't moved since collapsing. Her arms were still curled, even in sleep, as if holding something. "We might lose them," the doctor said. Jace didn't accept that. He reached into the warming chamber. "Don't," the doctor warned. "You'll get burned." But he ignored her. He removed his gloves, rolled up his sleeves, and touched the baby directly. Pain sharp and immediate, like grabbing dry ice. He didn't let go. "Your mom crossed a blizzard for you," he whispered. You don't get to give up, not now. The room fell silent. Then the baby twitched. Then chirped. Then breathed. A murmur of awe passed through the med bay. The mother stirred. My son. Her voice was hoarse. Jace turned. He's not gone. He walked to her and laid the baby gently in her arms. She cried. Not loud, but deep. The second baby was still. No movement, no chirp. The doctor shook her head. Too long in the cold, we might have saved one, but not both. Jace didn't move from the chamber. He stayed all night. He whispered, warmed, waited. And in the morning, when the mother whispered something in her own language, a goodbye, he thought, he refused to accept it. You're not alone anymore, he said. And this time the baby stirred. Breathed, opened one golden eye. Heartbeat detected, the machine beeped. Neria ran to the chamber, tears in her eyes. Jace stepped aside. She lifted her child and held both against her chest. For the first time since the storm began, she smiled. In the warmth of the human outpost, with the wind still howling outside, something rare had happened. Life had won, but more than that, something had started to thaw that no machine could measure. Trust. Jace didn't sleep, not properly. He dozed in the chair beside the medical chamber, his arms crossed, head leaning back against the wall. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of heaters and the occasional beep of monitors. Outside, the storm still roared against the walls of the outpost, but in here it was warm, peaceful. The alien mother, Neria, lay on a cot across from him. Her scales had darkened again, regaining a hint of their former shimmer. The frost had melted from her wings. Her body curled protectively around the two hatchlings that now breathed softly, their chests rising and falling in sync with the low, comforting rhythm of her breath. He still remembered the way she'd clung to them, the desperation in her voice when she whispered, "Please, help." That plea hadn't left his mind. He shifted forward when the doctor returned for her rounds. "How are they doing?" "Stable," she said, tapping a pad. "The smaller one, Rick, is stronger now. Luma's still weak, but improving. They'll make it." "And hers?" "Tired, malnourished, but healing." Jace nodded. The word healing felt heavier than just physical recovery. It applied to more than their bodies. He stood, stretched, and walked slowly toward the cot. Neria didn't stir. She slept so lightly now, ears twitching at every sound, but never waking unless one of her children made a noise. Jace stopped beside her and looked down at the hatchlings. The one curled tight against her chest had golden eyes half open, watching him. "Hey, little one," he whispered. It blinked, then gave a soft, warbling chirp. Neria stirred at the sound. Her eyes snapped open and her body went rigid until she saw him. Then she relaxed. Jace raised his hand slowly. "Just checking on them, they look better." She sat up, pulling the bobbies close. Her voice was rough from disuse. "They alive because you." He shook his head. "They're alive because you got them here, through that storm." Her eyes lowered. "No choice, they my heart." He nodded. "I understand." Neria looked down at her children. Her fingers, tipped with tiny black claws, traced the edges of their soft, forming horns. "Others left us, said we. Waste, not worth food, not worth life." Jace felt anger rise in his chest. "Then they were wrong. You did right coming here." She blinked slowly, then gave the faintest nod. He crouched beside her. "You have names for them." Her lips twitched. "Rick, the bold one, Luma, soft heart." "Rick and Luma," he repeated. "Good names." A silence settled between them, but it wasn't tense. It was soft, new, like the beginning of a conversation that neither of them had words for yet. Over the next few days, the med bay became a second home. Rick grew stronger quickly. He was the more vocal of the two, chirping when hungry, hissing softly when touched by cold hands. Luma remained quieter, always curling into her mother's side, blinking up at the lights with wide, unsure eyes. Neria barely left the room. She fed them tiny portions of warmed liquid protein, cleaned their scales with a damp cloth, and sang to them in a language no human could translate. A strange, humming melody that made even the coldest mechanics pause in the hallway. Jace visited often, too often, some muttered. "He's getting attached," the engineer 10 whispered one evening. Well, wouldn't you? The medic replied. Jace didn't care what they said. Every time he looked at Rick nipping his fingers or Luma blinking sleepily up from his palm, he felt something shift in him, something gentle, unfamiliar, necessary. On the fifth night, he found Neria crouched by the med bay heater, wrapping her wings tighter around the bobbies. The room was quiet, dimmed for rest. He leaned against the wall, sipping a warm drink. "You ever think of leaving?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. "Yes," she finally said, "every day." "Why don't you?" "Because here they safe." Jace nodded. "But," she added, "I do not belong." He frowned. "Who says?" "The way they looked your kind, the way they fear." He didn't argue, he'd seen it too. Whispers, long stares, people giving her a wide berth. "It'll pass." Neria looked up. Her eyes were dark, reflective like frozen lakes. "No, not pass, but maybe doesn't matter, not if you still come." Jace smiled slightly. "I'm not going anywhere." Her wings loosened just slightly. A few more days passed. Snow fell endlessly outside, but inside the hatchlings began to crawl. Rick was the first to tumble off the bed with a triumphant chirp and flap of his stubby wings. Jace caught him with a surprised grunt. "Hey now, you're supposed to be recovering." Rick clamped his teeth playfully onto Jace's sleeve and growled. Neria laughed. It was the first time he heard it, a sharp, light sound that startled even herself. She covered her mouth, eyes wide, as if unsure she was allowed. Jace laughed too. "You've got a bite, kid." Luma peeked over the edge of the bed and let out a small trill. The station began to adjust. Slowly, cautiously, people stopped staring. Some even brought toys, small knitted scraps, or bowls of nutrient paste. The hatchlings responded with chirps and cautious curiosity. One morning, Jace walked into the med bay to find Neria sitting beside the cot, with a human book in her lap. "Who gave you that?" "Young one, Anna, she say, picture story." Jace chuckled. "Did you like it?" "Confusing, too many cats." He laughed harder. "Fair point." Neria tilted her head. "Why you help us?" He paused. "Because someone once helped me. My mother was sick. We were poor. Someone saw her as more than just a burden. They saved her, so I guess it stuck." Neria looked at him for a long time. "Thank you," she said. "You already did." She blinked. "You gave me this." He nodded toward Rick and Luma, now tangled in a nest of blankets, both snoring gently. "A reason to come here every day." And so the days passed. The snow never stopped, but something inside the outpost had started to bloom. Not fire, not heat from wires and vents. Something quieter. Something stronger. Connection. Neria still didn't have her own room. She still slept on the floor, even when offered a real bed. But one night, as she rocked her bobbies to sleep and looked up at Jace sitting across from her, sipping tea and pretending not to watch her, she whispered, "Can stay." Jace looked up. "You don't need to ask." "Not just tonight." "I know." He smiled. "Stay as long as you want." Neria closed her eyes. For the first time, she believed it. She would stay, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because here, in this strange, cold world, she had finally found warmth. The snowstorm broke on the 11th night. After nearly 2 weeks of gray skies and white horizons, the wind finally quieted and stars returned to the sky. For most, it was a relief. Jace could hear the engineers cheering as they powered up the external rigs again. They would finally resume mining. Repairs would finally begin. There was talk of fresh supplies arriving within the week. But not everyone was cheering. In the corner of the med bay, Neria sat with her wings drawn tightly around her body. Her eyes were on the floor. Her children slept soundly, curled together beneath a thermal blanket. The storm had ended, but in her chest, another storm had just begun. Jace noticed immediately. He crouched beside her, holding a steaming mug. "Hot tea, I figured you might want it." Neria didn't move. She didn't take the cup. "You think I stay too long?" His brows furrowed. "No, who told you that?" "No one, but I see how they look. Some smile, but some whisper." Jace placed the cup beside her. It doesn't matter what they say. It matters what you choose. Neria's hands curled in her lap. I don't belong here. Your people have purpose, machines, jobs, duties. I can give nothing. I have nothing. You have them, he said, nodding toward Rick and Luma. Her eyes flicked to her sleeping children, softening. They are better now, strong. They could grow without me. Jay stared at her. Don't you dare say that. Neria flinched. He lowered his voice. Don't you dare think for a second they need anyone else. They need you, not just to keep them warm or fed. They need their mother. Your love brought them here. Your fight saved them. Not machines, not medicine. You. Her throat bobbed. She looked away. He continued, softer now. And if you think that isn't enough to belong, then let me be the first to say it is. But she said nothing. That night, Jace slept in his quarters for the first time in days. He didn't hear the door open, didn't hear the soft steps in the hallway, didn't hear the med bay door hiss shut as it closed again. Neria moved like a shadow, silent, slow. She bundled Rick and Luma in a thick fleece, wrapped their wings gently, and held them close against her chest. She looked back at the med bay one last time. The humming machines, the blinking lights, the folded clothes neatly placed in the corner, the cot she had grown used to. She whispered something. Then she turned. The night air was freezing again, but the storm had passed. The snow was fresh, untouched, glittering under the moonlight. The gate didn't make a sound as it opened. The alarm didn't buzz. The perimeter had been deactivated for maintenance. She knew that. Her feet crunched against the snow. One step, then another's, then another's. But on the fourth, her legs gave out. She fell to her knees, clutching the bobbies tight, shielding them from the cold with her wings. She tried to rise, but her strength was gone. Too much weight, too many days without rest. Her shoulders trembled. The door behind her hissed open. You really thought I wouldn't notice? Jace's voice wasn't angry. Just tired. Neria didn't answer. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't belong, she said. You gave so much, I give nothing. I can't pay, can't fix machines, no skills, no place. Jace knelt beside her, reached out, and gently took one of the hatchlings into his arms. Rick looked up at him and chirped sleepily. You think kindness is a transaction. You think you need to pay for warmth. She shivered. I thought, maybe if I go you be free. Free from what? From burden. Jace let out a long breath. You think you're a burden. Neria, I came out here to fix broken heaters and argue about coolant levels, and instead I found a family. She looked at him then. Family. Rick calls me Dad. Did you know that? Not in English, but in his chirps. When he looks at me, that's what I see. Luma follows me everywhere, and you. He hesitated. Then he said it. You don't make me feel alone anymore. Neria covered her mouth. He stood, lifted her gently from the snow. You're not leaving, not tonight, not ever. He carried her inside. Put her in a real bed. Wrapped the children in heating blankets. Sat beside her until she fell asleep. When her fingers reached out in her dreams, he took her hand. And didn't let go. The next morning, he gave her a room. Not just a cot, not a shared medical bed. But a real room, with a lock, with soft walls, with a window that looked out over the snowy plains. A nameplate was carved and bolted to the door. Neria plus hatchlings. He didn't ask her if she liked it. She just stood there and cried. Then hugged him without warning. Weeks passed. Snowstorms came and went. And in the quiet, Rick and Luma grew. Their scales thickened, their wings grew sturdy, their voices louder. They learned to run, to play, to chirp when hungry. Neria watched them constantly, her eyes full of pride. She never forgot what almost happened that night, how close she came to losing everything. But now, instead of silence, there was laughter. Instead of fear, there was warmth. And something deeper. Something neither of them had spoken yet. But both had felt. Love. It began with a whisper. Not from inside the station. Inside, all was peace. It came from the outer sensors, the ones placed near the southern ridge, barely more than static at first. Then a movement, 3 life signs, large, moving fast. Jay sat in the control room, sipping thick black coffee, when the technician's voice broke the silence. Foreman, you need to see this." He turned, squinting at the screen. Blurry shapes emerged from the snowy blur. "What is that?" "Not wildlife, too steady, too tall." "How close?" 2 kilometers, closing fast." Jay stood. "Alert the crew. Lock the outer doors. Get the doctor to secure Neria and the hatchlings." Inside her room, Neria felt it before the alarm sounded. A pressure, like old breath on her scales. She knew this cold. It wasn't from the wind, it was from the past. She clutched Luma and Rick tighter as they chirped anxiously. When Jace arrived, she was already on her feet, wings partially spread. "They come," she said. He nodded grimly. "Who?" "My blood, warriors, elders, sentinels. They come for judgment." "What do they want?" "Me and my children, to erase shame." Jace's eyes narrowed. "They can try." The outer gate remained sealed as the visitors approached. Cameras now revealed 3 figures, tall, winged, armored. Their scales were darker than Neria's, black with green patterns, weapons slung over their backs, golden eyes unblinking. The lead one stepped forward. "Open the gate," he said through the speaker. Jace pressed the intercom button. "State your purpose." "You harbor a traitor, a female who fled with unworthy spawn. We are here to take her back." "She's under our protection." "Your protection is irrelevant. We are her caste, her blood. We decide what lives, what dies." "Not today." There was a pause, then the warrior leaned forward. "You invite war over a defect and her broken young. I invite warmth over cruelty, and they're not broken, they're alive, they're growing, and they're not going anywhere." Behind Jace, Neria stepped forward, carrying her children. "No one takes them," she said. "Not now, not ever." The warriors recoiled slightly at the sight of her. "You defy the tribunal." "I defy death." "You choose exile." "I choose love." Her voice trembled but did not break. Jace moved to her side. "You're not alone." The lead warrior hissed. "Then remember this, the weak always fall." He turned, his wings sweeping snow into the air. They vanished into the storm. Silence returned to the station. But tension lingered. The staff was shaken. "They'll come back," Ten muttered. "Next time with more." "Let them," Jay said. But in his chest, worry bloomed. Over the next days, defenses were reinforced. Engineers set up barricades. Drones were reprogrammed to scout the perimeter. Jace checked them all personally. Neria spent her time training Rick and Luma, small games that taught them to fly in short bursts, to aim their fire breath, to duck and cover. "They need to be ready," she told Jace. "They shouldn't have to be," he said. "But they will." On the 9th day, the storm returned. This one was not snow. This one was fire. The alarm blared through the halls. Multiple hostiles approaching, armed, were under attack. Jace ran to the command deck. The outer cameras showed dozens of winged figures. This was not a warning. This was war. "Hold position. Get civilians into lockdown." He turned to the hallway. Neria stood there, both hatchlings beside her. They had grown. Their eyes burned with bright golden light. Their wings fluttered anxiously. "I will go," she said. "They want me." "No, you're not going anywhere. They'll destroy your station." "Not if we fight." The outer wall shook from the first blast. A controlled detonation. The gate cracked but held. Jace moved through the station, barking orders. "Hold the barricades, fall back if needed." Neria crouched beside her children. "You must not go out, stay hidden. If I fall, fly, fly, and never stop." Rick whimpered. Luma chirped and flared her wings. Neria smiled sadly. "You are strong now, I have seen it, but this is not your fight." "Maybe it is," Jace said behind her. Neria turned. He knelt beside them. "They're part of this too." The gate burst open. Armored warriors poured through. The station erupted in chaos. Jace led the defense with a stun rifle. 10 crew members held the line. Neria fought with fire and wing, weaving through the halls like lightning. And then Rick and Luma joined. 2 small shapes diving from the rafters. Rick bit into a warrior's arm. Luma scorched another's feet. Screams echoed. No one expected resistance from children, least of all from fire-breathers. The tide turned. One by one, the warriors retreated. Not from defeat, from disbelief. The unworthy had fought, and won. In the quiet after, the station stood. Damaged, but not broken. Jay stood over the gate, breathing hard. Neria walked to him, holding her children. They curled against her, panting. "They protected me," she whispered. "They protected us," he said. She looked at him. "Your people, they stayed, they fought for me, for them. You're part of us now, family fights for family." Neria lowered her head. "Then I will stay, until my last breath." Jace took her hand. "No longer." And for the first time, she let herself believe she would live to see peace. Because she had chosen love. And love had chosen her back. When the smoke cleared and the last scout drone confirmed no further threats on the horizon, Jace gave the order to lower the emergency lockdown. Doors hissed open. Lights returned to full brightness. Slowly, the station exhaled. But things had changed. Neria and her children no longer moved through the halls unnoticed. Now every step they took was followed by nods, smiles, and quiet respect. The same miners and technicians who once whispered behind Jace's back now stood straighter when Neria passed. No longer just tolerated, she was honored. Rick and Luma, newly painted as tiny heroes, were impossible to contain. They darted through the station with fierce confidence, chirping like wild birds, wings spreading wider every day. Their fire, once a fragile flicker, had grown into playful jets that had to be monitored by the engineering team. Jace leaned against a bulkhead outside the mess hall one afternoon, watching as Luma tried to pounce on a rolling thermos lid. "They're going to set the ceiling on fire," the cook said. "Worth it," Jace replied, sipping tea. Neria stood across the room, speaking softly with a mechanic about air vent repairs. She had learned enough human language to manage short conversations now. Her wings were folded neatly, her stance tall, proud, not just because of her children, but because this place was becoming hers. Home. That night, Jace sat outside the station, bundled in a thermal coat, boots dug into the snow. He watched the stars. Neria joined him quietly. "They shine more now," she said, settling beside him. "The stars. Yes, maybe because I see them without fear." He handed her a thermal blanket, which she draped over her shoulders. "You still think of them, the ones who came for you." Sometimes their voices echo, old commands, old shame, but now, the voices fade, yours grows louder. He looked over, mine. Not words, just warmth, like your hands, your fire. Jace smiled faintly. "You're stronger than you know." She leaned against his shoulder. "Not alone anymore, that's what makes me strong." He wrapped an arm around her. Neither spoke for a long time. The snow fell lightly around them. Spring on this planet wasn't flowers or melting ice. It was windless nights and clean skis. The ground stayed white, but the air carried a different scent, less of frostbite, more of breath. Rick and Luma now slept in their own cot. They complained every night when Neria insisted they stay out of her bed. It had been Jace's idea. "They need space, independence, they're growing." "You sound like a father," Neria had said, smiling. "Maybe I am. Then maybe I." She never finished the sentence, but it hung between them, waiting. The station received a transmission. Headquarters had heard about the skirmish. They were sending a ship, not to reprimand but to recognize. "We're receiving a commendation," Jace explained. "The higher-ups want to know what happened out here and why your name is on half the sensor reports." Neria looked worried. "They come to judge me. They come to listen, and you don't have to say anything, but I'll be there." She nodded. Rick and Luma peeked from the doorway, each wearing a human-made scarf with crude embroidered dragons. "Can they come? They should be the ones giving the speech." The ship landed 2 days later, sleek, silver, full of suits and officers. Jace met them at the hangar bay, shoulders squared. He walked them through the station, showed them the damage, then the repairs. Then the nursery corner, Rick and Luma sleeping, tails curled around each other. Then, finally, the courtyard. Neria stood in the sun. scales glimmering, wings spread, no fear. This is the one you call. Our guest, our hero, our friend. One officer, a tall woman with silver hair, stepped forward. You saved lives, risked your own, defended this outpost. That makes you one of us. If you wish to stay here or transfer to another station, you will be protected, legally and otherwise. Naria looked at Jace. He looked back silent. Then she turned to the officer. I stay here with him, with them. Then it's settled. Celebrations at Outpost Denver 7 were rare. But that night the mess hall transformed. Lights strung across ceiling panels, music from 3 different worlds, dishes strange and familiar. Someone even made a banner, family found in the storm. Naria wore a dark gray shawl made from heater mesh and stitched cloth. Her scales had never looked brighter. Jace stood at her side, drink in hand, arm never far from her back. Rick and Luma danced, or tried to. They mostly spun in circles and knocked over chairs. No one cared. Laughter echoed into the cold outside. Later in their room, Naria sat on the bed while Jace read a data pad beside her. You think they mean it? She asked softly. The humans, the promise to protect. Most do, but if they don't, I will. She smiled. I have nothing to give you. You already gave me everything. What? A reason to believe we can still make something warm in a frozen world. She touched his hand. Then I give you one more thing. What's that? Me. They didn't rush into it. There was no ceremony, no fanfare. Just quiet nights, hands held in slow, certain trust. In time, Jace moved into her quarters, or maybe she moved into his. It didn't matter. The room was theirs now. Home was no longer a place. It was a feeling. And it burned brighter than any flame the children could breathe. Years later, long after the outpost had become a thriving hub with mixed crews and integrated systems, a message would reach the capital. It would speak of unity, of love born in ice, and of a woman with scales and fire in her veins who once carried her dying children through a storm and found, in the most unlikely place, not just survival, but a future. Naria would walk the halls with Luma and Rick at her sides, grown now, proud and fierce. And Jace would smile every time he saw them, every time he looked at her, because in a place where everyone else saw monsters, he had seen a mother, and in saving her children, she had saved him too.